To read the mind of anyone, you need to know 3 techniques. These techniques are crucial to master. By mastering these methods, you can effortlessly discern and grasp what anyone is pondering. Let me tell you a Buddhist tale that will teach you how to read the mind of others. In a small village a long time ago, 2 brothers lived. The older brother was blind, so he spent most of his time at home, while the younger brother worked as a farmer. However, their farm was constantly being destroyed by the many animals in the fields. The younger brother was troubled by this problem, but he eventually came up with a solution. He thought, why not ask my blind brother for help to scare away the animals in the fields? He can sit in the field and shout if he hears any animal sounds, and this way our crops will be saved. After thinking about it, the younger brother built a small hut in the field and placed the elder brother inside it. He explained to him, brother, if you hear any animal sounds, just shout and the animals will run away. This will save our crops. The elder brother agreed to his younger brother's idea and began sitting in the field. Whenever he heard the sound of animals, he shouted and scared them away. They continued this practice for many days. One time, there was a field where a deer ran through and broke the fence before running away. Shortly after, a king who was pursuing the deer also came to the field. The king noticed the blind brother and asked him, "Have you seen a deer here?" The blind brother replied, "Your Majesty, I am blind, how can I see a deer? However, I can tell you that the animal that left my field is not worth chasing. You are wasting your time." The king was astonished by the blind brother's words and questioned how he knew this. The king asked the blind brother if he was lying, as he claimed to be blind but spoke about the worthiness of the deer. In response, the blind brother stated, "Your Majesty, the animal you believe to be a deer is actually a pregnant doe. I have never heard of a king hunting a pregnant doe, so I am telling you that she is not worth your pursuit. You should not waste your time chasing after her." The king was left astonished upon hearing this. He was unable to comprehend how the blind person could identify the doe as pregnant. He pondered, how can a blind person know this? How can he be sure whether the deer I am chasing is pregnant or not? How can he confidently inform me of this information despite being blind? The king felt the need to verify this and thus instructed his commander, "Commander, I want that animal alive. I need to confirm whether it is indeed a pregnant doe. The blind man seems to be very sure about this, and I need to investigate. Please go and find out if she is pregnant." The king's orders were received by the commander, who proceeded. When he came back, he told the king that the blind brother was correct and that the doe was pregnant. The king was filled with wonder and couldn't figure out how the blind person had known about the doe's pregnancy. The king had many questions in his mind and decided to ask the blind man to get to the bottom of this. "Look, I may not know whether you are truly blind or not, but I have come to ask you one thing. Will you give me the correct answer to my question in response?" The blind brother said, "Your Majesty, you can ask me anything you want, and I will answer you truthfully." The king said, "You are a wise man, and you seem to have a keen understanding of many things. Today I have called you to find out whether my wife is faithful to me or not." The blind brother responded, "Your Majesty, what kind of question is this? Your marriage has lasted for many years, and now you want to know such things. Why are these questions arising in your mind?" However, the king insisted, saying, "You must answer this question. If you do not provide me with an answer, I will punish you with the death penalty." Hearing the king's threat, the blind brother said, "Your Majesty, if you want the answer to this question, you will have to do me a favor." The king asked, "Tell me, what do I need to do?" The blind brother responded, "For that, you will have to leave your wife alone with me in a room." The king was initially angry upon hearing it, but he eventually agreed to the request and ordered his commander to leave the blind brother and the queen alone in a room. At that moment, the blind brother expressed his desire to touch the queen. Upon hearing this, the queen became furious and started beating the blind brother with her hands, feet, and all her might. Afterwards, the blind man somehow managed to escape and went to the king. Then the blind brother told the king, "Your Majesty, your wife is unfaithful." The king, enraged, drew his sword and went to the queen. Then the king asked a question, warning her that any falsehood would lead to her execution. He asked if she was faithful or not, to which the queen replied, "Your Majesty, you may as well kill me, but I am not faithful." The king is overjoyed because everything the blind brother has said is true. Upon hearing this, the king immediately went to the blind brother and asked, "How did you know that my wife is not faithful?" The blind man replied, "Your Majesty, it is quite simple. I told your wife that I wanted to touch her, and she became so enraged that she started beating me. When I told her that I wanted to touch her, she could have refused, but instead she began to beat me, and in the process, she touched my entire body. Now, you tell me," he continued, "how can such a woman be faithful?" The king said, "You are quite wise." "All right then, let's proceed," he added. "Answer one more question correctly, and I will let you go from here." The king then asked, "Tell me, am I truly my father's son or someone else's?" To this, the blind brother responded, "Your Majesty, why do you bother with this question? No matter who your parents are, you are the king of this state, so let this question go." But the king insisted, No, I want the exact answer to this question. Otherwise, this question will always bother me, so I want to know the truth." The blind brother responded, "Your Majesty, I can tell you right now whose child you are. But before that, I want you to promise that you won't get angry with me." The king said, "I promise I won't get angry with you." Then the blind brother said to the king, "You are indeed your father's son, but you are also under the shadow of a miserly merchant." Upon hearing this, the king rushed to his mother. He asked her, "Mother, please tell me the truth. Am I truly my father's son or someone else's? If you don't tell me the truth, I will give up my life right here." To this, the king's mother said, "Son, you are indeed your father's child, but you are also under the shadow of a miserly merchant." Upon hearing this, the king is delighted and immediately returns to the blind brother. He asked, "How did you know that the shadow of a miserly merchant was on me?" The blind man replied, "Your Majesty, you asked me many questions, and I gave you the correct answers to all of them. If you were any other king, the first would have received many rewards by now, but you haven't given me a single penny so far. It was from this that I estimated that you are very stingy." The king bursts into laughter and says, "Whatever you ask for, I will give it to you. But tell me, how do you know what is right and what is wrong? How can you provide such accurate and precise answers?" To this, the blind brother said, "Your Majesty, I am blind by nature. If I had eyes, I could easily understand anyone's thoughts. The mind has its language, and this language can be seen in the actions of a person's body. By observing a person's eyes, lips, the way they walk, and their activities, one can understand what is going on in their mind. Based on this, we can know the thoughts of anyone. But I am blind, so I perceive through actions. If I want to know something, I have to assign a task to the next person to see how that person works and how he does the task, and based on that, I can understand what is going on in his mind." The king asked, "So does that mean I can also know someone's thoughts?" To this, the blind brother said, "Certainly. You too can understand anyone's thoughts, but before that, you need to work on yourself. And that work is to calm your mind and bring your mind into the present. For that, today I'm going to tell you 3 ways, and these 3 ways are very easy and simple. But Your Majesty, before that, you have to do one thing: focus your mind. When we focus our mind and merge our mind into the present, we can understand the thoughts of others because that person is thinking in the present, and we also have to bring our minds into the present. Only then can we understand their thoughts. If we are thinking about past events, how will we know what the next person is thinking in the present? Because we are immersed in past events. To know anyone's thoughts, first and foremost, we need to focus our minds and bring them into the present.